Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Mark Fullock. We warmly welcome the family of Flight Sergeant William Morton Christie, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome Wing Commander Michael Garside, AWM Air Force Fellow. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please be seated if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant William Morton Christie. William Morton Christie was born on the 27th of December 1921, one of three children born to William and Cecilia Christie. He grew up with his brothers and sisters, Keith and Harold, and older half-sister Doreen, in the inner west of Sydney, attending Croydon Public School and then Ashfield Junior Technical School. Known as Billy and Bill to family and friends, Christie was a keen tennis player who loved going to the movies and listening to music. At the time of his enlistment, he was engaged to Poppy Charleston, lived in Burwood and worked as a motor trimmer or detailer with Peters Bryden Peters Limited in Redfern. Christie enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force in January of 1942 and began his training at Bradfield Park, north of Sydney. He was one of two Christie brothers who served for Australia in the Second World War. His younger brother Keith also served in the Royal Australian Air Force. In July 1942, Christie sailed to Canada to participate in the Empire Air Training Scheme, a program in which airmen from across the British Empire were pooled together for training and then sent to units that required their services. Christie trained as a wireless operator and an air gunner in Calgary and Halifax in Canada, and in September of 1943 sailed for England. He was promoted several times throughout his service, eventually reaching the rank of Flight Sergeant. On the 28th of March 1944, Christie joined No. 298 Squadron, Royal Air Force, which was based at Tarrant, Rushden in Dorset. The squadron's main role was to drop special operations agents by parachute into Nazi-occupied Europe. They flew Hadley Page Halifax heavy bombers to do this work. On the night of the 5th of June 1944, they towed Horsa gliders as part of the D-Day landing operations that liberated Western Europe from Nazi occupation. On the night of the 10th of September 1944, Christie took part in a No. 298 Squadron mission to drop supplies to special operations agents near Dijon in eastern France. On this mission, Christie served as a wireless operator and air gunner aboard Halifax, call sign Lima Lima 273, call sign Yankee for York. The aircraft took off from Tarrant Rushden shortly after 10 p.m. on the 10th of September. Just after midnight, the aircraft was flying through mountainous terrain over occupied France when it descended too low. It struck the ground near the tiny village of Levant, broke into several pieces and burst into flames. 2 crew members survived the crash, but for the 4 others, Flight Sergeant Sonny Solomon, Flight Sergeant Alan Laverick, Pilot Officer Owen Smith, and Flight Sergeant William Christie were killed. The fallen airmen were buried with full honours in the churchyard cemetery near Ippenack, and the townspeople of the nearby Ippenack, Albany and Morlin erected a memorial at the crash site, which is commemorated every year to this day. Christie was 22 years old. Among his possessions that were returned to his family in Australia were his wallet, found at the crash site, and a boomerang keepsake calling for him to have a safe return. His grieving family left his epitaph on his grave, always remembered by those you loved. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. In the photograph displayed today, beside the pool of reflection, Flight Sergeant William Christie is seated on the left-hand side to his brother, Warrant Officer Keith Stanley Christie. Keith would survive the war, completing his service in September 1945. This is but one of many of the stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant William Morton Christie, who gave his life for us for our freedoms and in the hope of a better life.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and we wish you all a very good evening.